Hey everyone, you're with Tom from Ludicrous Feed. Thanks so much for joining today on my YouTube channel. Today we're reviewing the Kia EV6 GT line all-wheel drive, and many thanks again to Kia Australia for loaning me this vehicle for the last week to review, and letting you know that I am indeed a Tesla owner, so I will be comparing this car very heavily to the Tesla Model 3 and the Model Y, and also the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which has the same eGMP platform. So the Kia EV6 Air starts at $67,990, while the GT line rear-wheel drive is at $74,990, while the all-wheel drive, which is what I'm sitting in right now, is $82,990 MSRP, whereas the Model 3 long range is currently $76,200 in Australia, while the Model Y long range, which is currently not released yet, is likely to start at around $80,000 before on-roads, whereas the Ioniq 5 long-range all-wheel drive is selling for $75,900 in Australia. So the warranty is as follows: 7-year unlimited vehicle warranty, whereas the powertrain is 7 years, 150,000 kilometers. The Model 3 long range is 4 years, 80,000 kilometers, while the battery is 192,000 kilometers. So the Kia EV6 battery size is 77.4 kilowatt hours across all variants. The Air's range is 528 kilometers. The GT line rear-wheel drive is 504 kilometers, while the all-wheel drive is 484 kilometers, which is fairly accurate with my previous range tests, as you may have seen. The Model 3 long range is 82 kilowatt hour battery with a range WLTP of 602 kilometers. In terms of performance, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour time, the rear-wheel drive for the Kia EV6 is 7.3 seconds, while the all-wheel drive GT line is 5.2 seconds. The GT line's power is 239 kilowatts with a torque of 605 Newton meters. In comparison, the Model 3 long range 0 to 100 kilometer an hour time is 4.4 seconds with 340 kilowatts of power. I'm certainly looking forward to Kia's EV6 GT, which will be Kia's fastest ever production car to be released hopefully in 2023. With a 0 to 100 kilometer an hour time of 3.5 seconds and 430 kilowatts of power. Alright, so the EV6 is 45 millimeters longer than the Ioniq 5, 15 millimeters shorter than the Model 3, and 7 centimeters shorter than the Tesla Model Y. The EV6 is lower than the Ioniq 5 and Model Y, but taller than the Tesla Model 3. The EV6 weighs 2,105 kilograms and is heavier than the Ioniq 5 and both Teslas. 1,600 kilograms of braked towing capacity rated. I quite like the styling of the Kia EV6. It's certainly more conventional in design than the Ioniq 5. Not a bad thing if you want a more familiar shape. I like the fastback design, and it's a compromise between a sportier sedan shape and the utility of a SUV. When you first see the car, it appears quite big, and even more so than the Tesla Model 3. Probably due to the fact that it's quite high compared to the Model 3, and that is certainly matched by the roomy interior. More of that later on. The GT line trim comes in 20-inch wheels with body-colored fenders, and the door handles are automatic folding. The boot has 480 litres of space, which is less storage than the Ioniq 5, and less storage than the Tesla Model 3 at 542 litres, while the Tesla Model Y has 854 litres. Another reason why I like the fastback design and hatchback door is that there's an appearance of more space, it's more ergonomic, and it fits larger, bulkier items, especially when the seats are down. The GT line has a powered tailgate and a 12-volt adapter in the back. The front is probably a little bit too small to be practical in my personal opinion. You can probably squeeze the V2L adapter or the charging cables in there. The Kia EV6 has 11 kilowatts of AC charging and 232 kilowatts of DC charging, and I managed to charge to 80% very quickly thanks to the 800-volt battery architecture. In comparison, the Model 3 has also 11 kilowatts of AC charging and 250 kilowatts of DC charging when you use a version 3 supercharger. The charge port is located in the rear quarter panel, which is what I like. I'm a bit of a traditionalist that way. And to open it, you just press that panel if the car is unlocked. You can also use the key fob as well. And to close it, press the button. And good to know also is that the charger cable is locked when charging and if the car is locked. So feel comfortable walking away when you're charging in a public car park. Like all EVs, plenty of charging options, and I demonstrated that it could be charged using the included 10 amp charger, making any power socket in Australia a potential fuel outlet. It also works fine with our Tesla Gen 3 wall connector, provided you've got it set on all vehicles. It also worked well in a public car park with a public charger, with a Type 2 cable, and we also made sure it worked with both 50 and 350 kilowatt DC chargers. And sure, the car doesn't have Tesla's Sentry mode, which is CCTV for the vehicle, but the trade-off is that it actually holds the charge very well when parked outdoors overnight, which I did for the last week. And as mentioned, after our highway test drive, the range certainly reflected quite accurately Kia's advertised range. And from the car's menu, you can certainly customize start times and charging limits from the main screen. Very easy to do. So the V2L, or vehicle to load external and internal ports, unlike the Ioniq, which is only external in Australia, the max load for both is 15 amps, 250 watts, which is about 3.3 kilowatts in total. The external is super handy, as I demonstrated, being able to cook, boil water, and even charge another EV. Great to go camping with, or even as a backup for your own house. The internal port would be useful for things like powering mobile devices, for example, charging a laptop on a long road trip. From the driver's point of view, admittedly coming from a Tesla initially is quite overwhelming with a lot of buttons and options in front of you, but after a week in this car, you certainly get used to it very quickly, and it actually starts to make sense. Styling and layout is very similar to the Ioniq 5, given that it's on the same platform. The backlighting looks great, especially at night time, and nice also having a center console in front of you for the driver, with all the critical metrics like the speedometer, battery state of charge, and range. What's great is the head-up display. I love this function. I wish Tesla's had this as well. I believe the Ioniq 5 in Australia doesn't currently have this, and certainly the Teslas do not as well. The Kia EV6 head-up display has the key metrics, speedometer, posted speed sign, and if you're navigating, turn-by-turn instructions, and also directional arrows. I also love the leading car departure warning, and this is great if you're not paying attention, for example, checking your phone at the traffic lights, which obviously you shouldn't be doing. What I'm not so much of a fan of is a lot of the traffic warnings, like blind spot and lane departure warnings. I think it's a bit too much personally, and that's certainly becoming a trend for modern cars. Just a personal thing. Luckily, it's easy enough to customize the alert volumes or just turn it off altogether. This GT line is equipped with traffic-aware cruise control and auto steer, which works reasonably well most of the time. Great in stop-start traffic, where you can adjust to how close you want to follow the car ahead of you. Drive quality is very similar to Ioniq 5, given that it's on the same platform in terms of handling and driving, both in urban and highway settings. In sport mode, it's a lot of fun around corners, as I demonstrated. I love having it in max regen and iPedal, but I haven't yet worked out how to have this on startup by default. It seems to revert back to level 3 each time I hop into the car. With the pedals though, it's easy enough to change mid-drive regardless. A very quiet cabin, not much road noise gets through, even on the highway at 100 kilometers an hour, very good noise insulation. Firm and even suspension makes for a very comfortable drive on road trips. The high driving position is handy for city driving, and my passengers certainly loved being higher up. I find SUVs in general not so great in public car parks, especially in inner Sydney where space is a premium, but the 360-degree camera is very helpful to offset this. The cross-traffic alert is also useful if you can't see behind you clearly enough. Very spacious second row for your passengers, plenty of legroom, high ceiling and sunroof, which can be shaded if required. No drive tunnel, so the middle seat is not compromised, and trust me, your passengers will love this car, and dare I say possibly more so than the Tesla Model 3. In this GT line trim anyway, there's almost anything you could ask for. Dual zone climate control, heated ventilated seats, which I think really should be an option in Australia given we get very hot summers. Powered seat control including lumbar support, fully adjustable steering column, admittedly manual, usual audio controls on your steering wheel with voice activation functions, rain sensing wipers, USB ports everywhere for charging mobile devices, drink holders and storage bins galore. I actually like this bucket space underneath the armrest here, great for storing my cameras when I record videos. What I also love is the second row can recline a bit further depending on the position of the bar, separating it from the boot space. The center pull-down console in the middle also can be configured so the drink holders are out of the way. The GT line also comes with vegan leather. Now the center touchscreen is basically a carbon copy of the Ioniq 5, given both that and the EV6 are on the same platform of course. It's extremely granular in customization, and like with all systems, you'll get used to where things are located the longer you use it. You can customize the climate controls, and I noticed that during our long drives, whenever we entered a tunnel, it would automatically switch over to recirculate and must rely on stored GPS map data. Charging and departure times can be set, and that helps you take advantage of cheaper electricity if that applies to your situation. You can also set charging limits in terms of percent. If you use V2L, you can also set a reserve for your battery so you don't end up being stranded somewhere should you use your entire battery heating overnight, for example. If you find an electric vehicle too quiet, you can also add augmented driving sounds if that's your thing. The home screen infotainment page is quite useful and has been designed well enough to supply the info you need for a drive. It can also tell you how much more range you have if you turn the AC off. The navigation and map system is easy enough to use, although you have to press a few extra buttons to confirm your destination. I do worry though, without regular software updates, that those maps can get out of date very quickly. Same goes also for charging stations. As we all know, things can change very quickly. Bit of advice: if you're going on a road trip somewhere, regardless of type of EV, make sure you do look up PlugShare to get up-to-date information from other users on the state of chargers. Currently in 2022, don't forget non-Tesla EVs cannot charge at a Tesla supercharger, so keep that in mind when you're making your decision. The audio system in the GT line is Meridian and has 14 speakers located throughout the vehicle. With such a quiet cabin, the audio does come through quite nicely and is clear and true. So in summary, what do I think of the Kia EV6? Well, I think it's well designed, it's well thought through, and it's certainly a bona fide ground-up electric vehicle in its own right. Although similar to the Ioniq 5 in many ways, it is very different. Where the Ioniq 5 is bold, the EV6 is a classic. I quite like the sportier look of the EV6. I love the lines, the lighting, particularly from the rear, and yet it's a sportback, which also makes it an ideal family vehicle. The drive quality is phenomenal, both on the highway and around corners, yet it's super comfortable for your passengers. The GT line trim at least comes with so many inclusions for both safety and convenience. The tech in the infotainment system is sound, and the touchscreen is responsive enough, which I quite like. There are also corresponding buttons if you prefer not to be fiddling with the screen when you're driving. That I can understand. The overall quality of the finish of the car, both exterior and interior, is superb. It's hard to fault really, and there is certainly amazing attention to detail from Kia. So if you're willing to part with over $90,000 drive away for the Kia EV6 GT line in Australia, then you certainly get a lot for your money, and there are so many inclusions. But the downside is, with this price tag, it certainly starts to compete with other vehicles like the long-range Tesla Model 3 and probably the Tesla Model Y when it eventually lands in Australia. But I'm very happy to see more electric vehicles in Australia, and more choice is always better for the consumer. And I can honestly say that the EV6 is a viable Tesla alternative. Alright everyone, that's my review of the Kia EV6 GT line all-wheel drive. Thanks again to Kia Australia for lending us this car for the last week. I've certainly enjoyed bringing all of you this footage. Thanks everyone, stay safe, and until next time, as always, happy charging.